Okay, next we're happy to welcome Ben Hansen. Okay, he's of the TV's Fact and Faked, Paranormal Files, and UFOs Declassified. He's a former special agent with the FBI, and Ben's role on Paranormal Files is to lead a team of 5 investigators who travel throughout the world looking for answers, okay, to paranormal mysteries, including UFO encounters. Today, Ben will address the question, what can we learn about UFOs by studying interviews given on television by major U.S. political figures, such as Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and President Barack Obama. Okay, so let's welcome Ben Hansen.
Thank you. Now, the lecture I have prepared today is kind of a combination of, well, it's evolving. It's always evolving. I got into taking a look at what we call nonverbal communications, gestures, and things like that as part of my background. Came from investigating a lot of child sex crimes and things like that, and interviewing witnesses and perpetrators. And so this is just kind of a personal interest of mine in forensic interviewing that I decided to apply to some recent interviews, primarily given by talk show hosts. And what we're going to be talking about is US presidents currently, well, with the most current presidents, what they may know, what they may not know about UFOs, and what we can kind of get from these interviews. So one of the things that a lot of the ufologists who research the presidents, what they'll try to do is look for official documents. We do have a lot of these. They go to the archives, they go to the research libraries, and try to get all the files they can about the different presidents and what they've requested. We can also look at official statements. There have been a few presidents who have made statements. We had Jimmy Carter, who before becoming president said, I will do everything I can once I become president to look into the files. We had statements before and after of Bill Clinton and his interest in it. We had, back during the flaps of the UFO flaps of the 50s and 60s, presidents who made comments that they were going to look into the files, or that this and that, investigation was ongoing. Then we have unconfirmed stories and rumors. So those of you who are really into this subject probably have heard of Eisenhower and Holloman Air Force Base, and the legend that his schedule has him disappearing for at least 24 hours. They don't know where he went. It's supposed to be a dentist appointment or something, I think. And then we have witnesses who say that he shows up at Holloman Air Force Base, and a friend of a friend or whatever saw. I have those stories too, that somebody has officially seen the video of an actual craft landing at Holloman Air Force Base, beings coming out and meeting, and then being escorted out to meet with the president. Now, I would love it to be true, but we kind of have to put that in that gray kind of area where we can't confirm these legends and things like that. But the other source that we have is casual comments, interviews, things that people say off the cuff. So what we're going to look at as we jump into this is we're going to look at a few different interviews on talk shows. Now keep in mind, of course, these are meant for entertainment. That's why people go on to talk shows. However, if we were to set this up as what we call a forensic interview, there's some differences. We're not setting them down. They're not faced with the possibility they're going to be charged with a crime for perjury. We're not isolating them in a room and having other people do follow-up questions. It's very relaxed. But keep that in mind, because this should be a relaxed conversation. Yet, in my opinion, I think that I found some key indicators of high stress. Now, there's no one indicator for deception. There's just not. You can't look at something and say, oh, well, he touched his nose, he's lying. All right? But when you take the whole picture and you take a base level of how this person normally acts when telling the truth and when they're relaxed, and then what happens when they get stressed, we start to see red flags. If you have enough of those red flags together, what you might come up with is an indication that they are under stress. What we don't know is why. Okay? So there's a lot of speculation here. Most communication is nonverbal. You've probably heard that. It's actually about only 20% of the tone and the way we say things is what matters, and 10% is the actual words we use. So if you're going to have a critical conversation, like in a relationship or something like that, highly recommend you try to do it in person. Okay, because you're going to lose a lot of that stuff in translation if you get on the phone or you text somebody and try to have, resolve some type of dispute. Well, when we're looking at human detection or deception techniques, there's some kind of tricks that we could use, some things like that, some things we look for. A lot of people are going to try to appeal to your emotions rather than the facts. Okay? Try to persuade you. I do want to touch on this just a little bit because we do address it. Something that came out of a branch of psychology called neurolinguistic programming. You can get certified in this if you're a therapist or a car salesman or in human resources. It's very useful. It's not foolproof, but what you're looking at is a diagram where studies have shown that if this were a right-handed person looking at you, studies have shown that there is a correlation to where our eyes look when we're accessing information. So this is legitimate, otherwise they would not be teaching it in law enforcement academies and different agencies. So if someone, for example, was remembering something that actually happened, okay, they have a tendency to look up and to the left, which would be your right. If they're constructing an image of something that didn't happen, okay, it's up and to their right or your left. So you can sit down and have a conversation with somebody and kind of use this diagram and just ask them questions. How was the concert last night? You know, tell me about it. What did you hear? Auditory is usually looking side to side. And you can kind of get a good sense of whether things actually happened or not. So this is one of the tools that we use when we're interviewing. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out with an interview that took place April 2nd, 2014. How many people saw Bill Clinton on Jimmy Kimmel? Wow, nobody. One. A couple people. All right. This is really good stuff. So I think it was on a Friday. Okay, on a Wednesday, Jimmy Kimmel, really funny talk show host. I love watching his shows. He comes out and he says, I have Bill Clinton who's coming onto the show, and I'm going to ask him about UFOs and what he did to look into the files. Okay, so I think that was on a Wednesday. He had several days of forewarning, knowing what he's going to be asked. Now, some people argue that presidents always are told the questions they're going to be asked. That's plausible. I don't know that it's exactly the case, but it makes sense. I mean, if your wife is going to run for president, a couple years later, and you're still in the politics, you probably want to screen the questions beforehand. Okay? So what you're going to see is Bill Clinton already knowing this question's coming. Okay? Now, before this segment, he's laughing. He's having a grand old time, and he's talking about cheese and some other stuff that is very relaxed. When they come back from commercial, you're going to see him grip the sides of the chair. His posture suddenly becomes minimized. The gestures, if you see someone like hold their wrists or grip a chair and they suddenly stop gesturing, okay, that can be a sign of anxiety or stress, because people who are relaxed tend to do that more. And you're going to see him do some things with his jaw. He flexes his jaw. Overall, I believe you're going to see a demeanor shift, something he doesn't like about this question. So we're going to explore this first part of it here.
The first thing we observe is that Bill is intently focused on Kimmel, who just a moment ago had him laughing about cheese, and again when he said he was going to ask about UFO files, but now Clinton is quite serious. Kimmel makes fun of himself, saying he'd never be able to be president, and Clinton doesn't bat an eye. Instead, we see him swallow several times, press his lips together, and move his tongue around in the inside of his cheek a few times. Increased swallowing can be an indicator of stress, either from anticipation of being caught in deception or nervousness about the interview process in general. The tongue against the inside of the cheek is often associated with thinking and uncertainty. One other interpretation is that it can sometimes indicate contempt, a sort of satisfaction that someone feels when they deceive another. Known as duper's delight, the feeling expressed is similar to the secret pleasure someone gets when duping or deceiving someone. Personally, I'd go with the first interpretation in this case. There's too little information at this point to indicate deception, but it does appear that he's starting to lose confidence.
Okay, so we start to see a shift in what he was talking about before. Now, for somebody who doesn't really care about UFOs or thinks it's a fun subject, we would expect them to maybe kind of keep laughing and kind of being jovial about it. That's not what we see here. So it gets interesting here because he's going to do a series of things. Bill Clinton is not a great liar. He tends to talk and keep filling in the gaps when he gets nervous. So he does some things what I call backing out of the dead end alley, okay, or mid-sentence jumping. He starts down a topic and, whoops, okay, I don't know what I'm saying. I can't talk about that anymore. Back up. He has trouble keeping the chronology straight, okay, of when things happen in what order. And he gives superfluous detail. All right, you've probably maybe caught someone lying before and like, well, hey, what are you doing here late at night? Oh, I was just, walking around and checking things out, and I, was thinking about getting a pizza, earlier, but then I came out here and, I was looking at they tell you details really aren't necessary. So Jimmy Kimmel asked him about Roswell in Area 51. Okay, so let's see what happens.
We had, I think it was at the beginning of my second term, we had the anniversary of Roswell.
You waited that long?
I did.
Wow.
Well, I didn't. And then there's also Area 51. You remember there was a great sci-fi movie where there was an alien kept deep under the ground in Area 51? So first I had people go look at the records on Area 51 to make sure there was no alien down there.
Did you catch that? Not many people notice that right after he answers Kimmel in the affirmative, he slips in a complete denial.
You waited that long?
I did.
Wow.
Well, I didn't. And then
Now we have three interesting flags in one sentence. Clinton starts by stuttering, offers a complete contradictory statement to his previous one, and then backs out of the dead-end alley by changing subjects completely. Why would he offer denial and slip it in so quickly without qualifying the statement?
Okay, so it seems like he's starting to get a little bit off his game here, okay? A little bit of stuttering, like pointed out, he contradicts himself. He starts talking about Area 51 and he says, well, we didn't find an alien there. It turns out that the people think that because they had to put on special clothes an hour outside before going in. And you're left there thinking, what is he talking about? I spoke with George Knapp, who, broke the Area 51 story. And he's interviewed dozens of workers who've been on base, and not one of them has ever mentioned anything about putting on special clothes. So it's almost like somebody had maybe given some information to Clinton, and then he got it confused with maybe some other stuff he was told, and was suddenly like, wait, maybe I'm saying too much. Okay, now it doesn't mean he knows anything about aliens, but he keeps stopping himself and changing the subject. So eventually, he starts feeling comfortable again, okay? And he starts talking about space and how wide and expansive it is and the possibility there is life. And Jimmy Kimmel comes back at him and throws him a curveball, okay? So you're going to see what happens when he asks him, are you hinting that we're not alone? Okay, so bear in mind, if you think that this is being hypercritical, go check out Paul Eckhart, who is the consultant for Lie to Me, the TV show. And they look at micro expressions. Okay, so I know it seems way out there for some people, but take a look at this.
That they might be able to support, so I don't know.
Oh.
Let's play that again for those who missed it, because it's pretty subtle, but it's definitely present and quite remarkable. I bet Clinton probably didn't even know he did it. It happened rather instinctually before he caught himself and began talking. Watch again. This time look for signs of incongruence.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
No.
Did you catch it? I almost couldn't believe it when I first saw what Clinton did. He nods his head yes. He actually nods his head yes in response to Kimmel's question. You're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens. Clinton immediately nods yes and then quickly says no. And the jaw clenching has returned. Well, there's one other thing I want to point out, an even more subtle reaction, because some of the best indicators of tension are the most difficult to spot. Take a look at Clinton's left hand. As we already discussed, lack of hand gesturing can be an indicator of stress. His hands are back on the arms of the chair, completely motionless, until here.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
A very convenient time to have a nerve twitch. When Kimmel says, are, that there are aliens, the fingers on the left hand clench and slightly retract. It's almost as if he was shocked by the idea that Kimmel may think he's hiding the truth.
Okay, so believe me, when I look at these things, I feel nutty because I look at them in such detail. I start to wonder if I'm seeing strange things in here. But this whole part of the interview was 1 minute 50 seconds. Okay, so to give you an idea, the analysis in that one I think turned out to be 46 minutes or 40 something like that. So it was long. I'm going to skip this part. I did have the whole interview analyzed with what we call layered voice analysis, which is like voice stress analysis. Company out of Israel who's done some work for us before. Turns out exactly where I was pointing out places I thought he was stressed, the layered voice analysis indicated the same. Okay. So now let's jump ahead to President Obama. All right. This was 2015, okay? President Obama was supposed to be on the show, I believe, in the fall of 2014. He canceled for some reason. Stephen Bassett, with the Disclosure Movement, believes that it had something to do with the timing of the congressional hearings where they did a mock congressional hearing for disclosure, and they had all these DVDs. Okay, of that whole hearing session, and they were going to mail them to every senator, every congressman. That was supposed to take place, I think, a day or two before Obama was going to appear on Kimmel. So, at any rate, I don't know if it has anything to do with that, but now he appears in March of 2015, and I only knew he was going to be on Kimmel because I live in Southern California, and the 405 freeway was like shut down. And I heard he was in town, but it didn't occur to me that Kimmel might ask him about UFOs. So I went to sleep. I didn't watch the show. And the next morning I woke up and I get all these emails. People are saying, when are you gonna analyze this? When are you gonna, do what you did before? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I watched the interview on the internet and I was blown away. And the reason being, the day before, the Los Angeles Times does a story, and they said, I wonder if Kimmel's going to ask Obama the same questions he did Clinton. And in that story, they referenced this video, okay, the Bill Clinton video. So, here it is.
Bill Clinton. This story provides readers a link to my video analysis on the former president. It's likely that Kimmel's production team picked up on the story and watched the Clinton analysis because Jimmy actually makes reference to my video during his interview with Obama. Yes, Jimmy, you're right. I am going to examine the facial expressions and every twitch.
Okay, so I don't mean to kind of toot my own horn here, but I have to say that there was nobody else doing this. This is the only video that was out there analyzing Bill Clinton. So the article comes out, the production sees it, maybe Kimmel even watched part of it, I don't know, but here he is talking to the President of the United States about my video. It was pretty daunting. So I sat there in front of my computer and I was like, should I even do this analysis? I felt kind of compelled. I felt like I had to. And then I didn't know if I was going to get in trouble or if someone was going to knock on my door. Still free country, right? So what ensued is you have about 50 seconds is all. 50 seconds where they talk about UFOs, okay? The first thing I want to point out is you see right here in this freeze frame, Obama has his mouth open, okay? Now in the longer video, I talk a lot about the open mouth, and I show you a lot of different videos where this is typical for Obama. He listens a lot of times with his mouth open, and I even researched what does that mean when people have their mouth open. It could mean they're in deep thought, they're thinking. In his particular case, 80% of mouth breathers, it's a nasal obstruction, okay? So I do think he probably has some obstruction of some sort, and I was going to dismiss it. That was until I noticed something else.
Breaths per minute. The main function is to provide their lungs more air. If you take a look at other parts of the interview and other interviews that Obama's given, you'll see that he quite frequently listens with his mouth open, including during conversations and topics where he should be relaxed. So it follows that he probably has an airway restriction, right? I mean, if you ask the First Lady, I would be surprised if we learned that the President has snoring issues. Taking this into consideration, I was about to dismiss the open mouth as immaterial to our focus. That was until I discovered something very interesting. Thanks to the wonders of high-definition television, my attention was drawn to something you can't normally measure from a TV interview: a person's rate of breathing. Normal breathing rates for an adult average between 12 to 16 breaths per minute. Anything above 20 breaths per minute is considered elevated and labeled with a medical term, tachypnea. More than 24 breaths per minute is considered a very serious condition. Basically, if our oxygen level is low or carbon dioxide level is high, our body is instructed to breathe more often. People experience an increased breathing rate for a few different reasons. Besides attributing it to exercise, since we can see the President didn't just go for a jog, their body could be responding to stress, pain, anger, or experiencing a panic attack. Let's have a look at Kimmel sets up the UFO question, and let's see if we can take a breathing rate measurement. We lose some resolution as we zoom in, but if you can look somewhere near the lapel and tie mic, you can quite easily see the chest rising and falling. Pay attention to the shallowness of the breathing as well.
My hand would just, it'd still be hot from touching the Bible, and I would immediately race to wherever they will have the files about Area 51 and UFOs, and I go through everything to find out what happened. Did you do that?
If you do the math at 10 breaths in 14 seconds, that works out to be an average of 42 breaths per minute. 42 breaths per minute! Certainly this can't be the case. People would end up hyperventilating if they stayed at that rate for more than a few minutes. Wouldn't we have noticed his voice giving out as if he was running out of air? Yet he sounds normal. Well, that's the point when it comes to some forms of stress breathing. The body doesn't need the oxygen yet. It only thinks that it does because it's engaging in a physiological preparation for a fight or flight response.
Okay, so you kind of get the idea here. If you've ever had the unfortunate experience of taking a polygraph, they're not fun. You've got a chain wrapped around your chest that measures that breathing. And what they're looking for is changes in the depth and the rate and everything else, so the consistency of the breathing. When someone asks you a yes or no question, it's not like suddenly you're out of breath. Like, oh gosh, I can't talk, I've got to hurry and increase the breathing. It's a physiological response. It's all of a sudden, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I feel like I need more air. And once that stressor is passed, you return to normal. Okay, and that's why they can measure it within a few seconds. So here we have this, now he is a smoker, and that's been pointed out. So he probably already has an elevated level, and I measured that. It's about 24. Okay, so it is already pretty high. But in this part of the segment, there's no real explanation why it should be that high, okay, like twice the amount. So, next we got into how does he treat the subject of UFOs? Has anyone ever heard comments that Obama made before he was president? Okay, no one, I guess. I don't really have time to show you, but there was a Democratic debate where he was on a panel and Senator Kucinich was over here, and the moderator, Tim Russert, asked Kucinich about his UFO sighting, okay, because he had seen a UFO, he reported it. His point, I think, was to try to embarrass him. Kucinich said, well, yeah, I saw an object, it was unidentified, and there you have it. Well, no one really heard of Senator Kucinich in the race after that. It was a career killer for him. And every politician knows that. Up until recently, you just don't talk about UFOs. Okay? Well, when they asked Obama kind of a similar question, like a good politician, he brushed it aside, talked about his policies, made a joke. Oh, I don't know about people from other worlds, but I'm worried about people here in this world, and, you know, really smooth. But then we have, once he's president, I wish I had time to show this. It's great. But he comes to Roswell, New Mexico, and he makes a joke about landing there and telling the people that he comes in peace. Okay? And after he makes that comment, he says, you know, kids are always asking me, 8, 9, 10-year-olds asking me about Roswell and if there's aliens there. And I tell them, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. Now, he said this a few times, and remember, when I put this analysis together, this was really shocking for a president to say that. If you break that down, like, that's not a joke for 9 and 10-year-olds. I'm going to kill you. I'm the president. I'm going to kill you. Okay? All right, now we have had candidates say much more shocking things since then. But you know, some people get away with it and others don't. Obama has made these faux pas, like, you know, the Special Olympics on Jay Leno. He talked about Special Olympics and had to apologize. And so he sometimes makes mistakes like that. But the point is, it's always been a joke to him. He's always treated it like most politicians and laughing it off. Okay? So what I'm going to show you right now is the first time ever that a president has said this statement, and the first time that he's taken the subject seriously. Now, if you watch the whole interview, which we don't have time for, you would see right after Kimmel asked Obama that question, did you look, did you see, did you explore? He gives 3 joke statements, which I believe are meant to deflect and kind of distract. Sometimes people who are under stress will throw a joke out. Example, let's say you, or not you, your friend, is being unfaithful to their spouse, okay? And the wife comes up and says, honey, where were you last night? Are you out with your secretary? Did you go somewhere with her? And he says, yeah, you know what, I did. Because I know Tuesday is, you know, the coupon night at the grocery store, and I know you love coupons, and that's where you would be at the grocery store. So with all that money you're saving, I bought a timeshare cabin in the woods. And I was with my secretary in the woods last night, and that's where I was. And how does the wife feel now? Stupid for even asking, right? Some people use jokes like that to extremes to dissuade and make people think like, okay. But did they answer the question really? I mean, he made a joke of it, but we look for indirect answers, okay? So anyways, we had 3 joke statements, and then we have this. With it. Why? We don't know. All the incidents I could find where he speaks about it were dismissive in nature or laced with derision until now. Guys, this is huge. It's really quite extraordinary what just happened here. Bear with me and let's break this down. Okay, so if you had seen him laughing and having a great old time before, and all of a sudden his shift, this is greater than Bill Clinton's was. Okay? He closes his eyes, he looks down, shakes his head, and looks down, and he kind of has, you see how his lips are drawn downwards. He looked at Kimmel. Everything that I show here in the video, to me, in my opinion, is a shift indicating he is serious. Now, some people come out and like, no, he's still joking. He's either got to be the world's greatest actor, okay, or we're seeing what these emotions are called leaking through. These are unwanted emotions, but this, to me, is real. Now, again, it doesn't mean he knows anything about aliens. But listen, what were the words he said? I can't reveal anything. Okay. Suppose you were president and your administration had come out and said regarding UFOs and aliens, number one, there's no evidence that the government is involved in a cover-up. And number two, there's no evidence, significant evidence that we have been contacted. Okay? If your government had said that, would it make sense for the president to then come out and say, well, we can't reveal anything? No, it wouldn't make sense. But that's exactly what happened. In 2011, Stephen Bassett and the Disclosure Project made an online petition to the White House. They got the Obama administration to come out and officially state that there was not any evidence of a U.S. cover-up and that there was no evidence that we'd been contacted. So why would he now come out and says, I can't reveal anything? Okay, so I spend like 10 minutes analyzing what that one statement might mean. Okay. Anyways, you know that we talk about the closing of his eyes, hard swallowing, all this stuff, and then he follows up with another joke. Okay. The other thing I point out here. Do you know what the news said the next day? Do you know what Huffington Post, CBS, all those guys? President Obama denies knowledge of alien contact. Did he deny it? There is no actual denial here. Okay? So pay attention when you hear these things from the media. Are they getting it right? Are they just using taglines that they think are going to get more hits on their website? Okay? He appeared on Ellen DeGeneres on February 11th. Okay? And here we have Macy Hensley. And she's this kind of presidential expert, okay, that Ellen has had on several times. She knows a whole lot of facts about presidents. And what you're going to see is a really cute interview where he's being, you know, really playful with this little girl, and she has these questions. So you're going to have some fuzzy good feelings here. But I want you to pay attention to what he actually says to the child, okay? Now, no, I'm not, you know, I haven't dismissed the fact that he's talking to a child, but nevertheless, he's also talking to the American public when he does this. All right.
What else?
Very interesting. If you remember, President... Okay. Exactly what he said is, the truth is, Macy, we haven't actually made direct contact with aliens yet. Now, there's a lot of what we call operative words in there. Okay, we have direct contact, we have we have the word yet. So when he says we, is he saying Michelle and I haven't? Is he saying the U.S. government or the world hasn't yet? But do you understand? Words do mean something. Now, I can prove to you that this interview was completely staged. As you back up and you watch, then they're looking at cue cards or a teleprompter. And when they have Macy on the show, she has her own cue cards because she can't read. So they create little pictures for her, okay, for her to know what questions are coming up. And you'll see Obama looking up and looking at the cue cards every so often for what his line is. You also see towards the end, Ellen talks about these bowls that she gave Obama for his dogs, and a picture comes up on the screen behind him. So the producers had it ready. The whole thing's staged. So if it's staged, so is his answer, which means the answer is carefully thought out. Okay? And if the answer is carefully thought out and you say, we haven't made direct contact yet, what are you asserting? You're asserting that you are in a position to know. How does he know what the rest of the world might know? If he's saying that we are the world or that I or the government. Okay? So that's one point. The other thing, we could debate all day about what yet means. Does that mean he's hopeful? Does that mean that they've tried? Does that mean they have something, indirect contact? We really don't know. But I do want to skip ahead just a little bit because just remember the series of what Obama has now said. We have joking Obama. He jokes about the subject. He becomes president. He still jokes about it till he gets on Kimmel and he says, I can't reveal anything. After the administration's already said nothing to reveal. And now we have Obama telling everyone, we haven't made direct contact yet. So which is it? Okay? All right. My conclusion with Obama, before we leave that, is that one of three things. He's either playing up on the drama, and he finds it amusing, but he's kind of playing like the cool kid in school, like, I know something you don't know, but he doesn't know anything. Okay? Which is possible. Second conclusion is he has at least some significant knowledge, and he's chosen his words carefully so he can remain technically truthful. Now, as opposed to Clinton, who bloviates about everything and just talks until he's in trouble, Obama is actually pretty precise with his words. He's usually pretty careful and diplomatic with it. He thinks before he speaks. Okay? So it would make sense that somebody has told him, look, Mr. President, kind of pats him on the head. Don't worry about it. There are some things that we can't talk about right now, so we're not going to go there. Or the third option is that he does have knowledge, okay, but he's been instructed to keep quiet about it. And now he's actually being deceptive to us. All right? So, meanwhile, Hillary Clinton and UFOs are all over the news. Okay? If you've paid attention to this, there are numerous articles and worldwide coverage. Give you the brief history here. Last year, I think it was last year, end of 2014, John Podesta, if you've heard of this man, was special advisor to President Obama for a whole year. It's very difficult to find online what he was advising him on. No one really knows. But he leaves with a tweet and says, my biggest failure of 2014 was not obtaining disclosure of the UFO files. Okay? Now, if you know John Podesta, that's not a surprise. He's a legitimate proponent. He's spoken at press clubs and things like that. He loves X-Files. He wants disclosure. It's not a joke to him, okay, when he says that. So he leaves office, and you got to think when you're sitting next to the president and advising him a whole year, you got the president's ear, and that's your biggest thing. You got to, hey, you know, Barry, let's look into the UFO files and kind of, you know, help me with this. This is important. He's talking to him about it. Well, now he becomes Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. Okay? He starts on the tweeting again and tells this actress who interviewed her, says, hey, Lena, great interview, but next time ask her about aliens. Okay? So that's kind of funny. It takes a while for mainstream news to pick up on all this. She goes on the campaign trail, and reporter David Steer, the Conway Daily Sun, who loves asking these types of questions to all the candidates, she says that she will get to the bottom of it and that we may have already been visited. Okay? So she then appears on Jimmy Kimmel, and I think we have time maybe to end with that and see if I can wrap it up.
That's right.
When we had your husband, President Clinton, on the show, he said, I asked him about UFOs in Area 51, and if you looked in, because if I was president, that's the first thing I do. I go right into those files and see what was going on.
Right.
And he said that he did do that.
Yes.
And then he didn't find anything.
Well, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah, why not?
Right? And you know, there's a new name. It's unexplained aerial phenomenon.
Unexplained aerial phenomenon,
Yep,
really?
yep, UAP. That's the latest nomenclature.
I like the old one. I like UFO. I don't know why.
Well, I think we can use them interchangeably, but I would like us to go into those files and hopefully make as much of that public as possible. If there's nothing there, let's tell people there's nothing there.
What if there is something there?
Well, if there is something there, unless it's a threat to national security, I think we ought to share it with the public.
Well, what if everybody's all hopped up on medical marijuana and everybody gets paranoid? I would love it.
That's why I want more research.
If you share it with me, I'll decide what is the best course of action. I really have my ear to the ground.
Well, I'm more than happy to do that.
Do you love...
Okay. Do you think she was being sincere about sharing it if she found something? I haven't finished my analysis here, but to me, just cursory look at that, I feel there's not sincerity there. Why would it not be national security? Okay, if they're covering it up with this part, of course they're going to claim that it's national security. If Bill Clinton had already said that he had all the Roswell files reviewed, okay? John Podesta says he was unable to get anything in the FOIA requests. Now Hillary Clinton comes out and says, I want to look again. What does that imply? Did they miss something? Imagine this. If she does become our next president, how would you feel walking into that Oval Office, believing that you may not be the most powerful leader in the country, that you answer to somebody or a group, somebody else, that not even you can gain that information because somebody is withholding it from you and lying to you. Now, President Clinton even has said if he had been lied to, it wouldn't be the first time a president had been lied to before. Imagine how that feels. Okay, the power structure, even the perception from her, the power structure is not what you might think in this country. That even our own presidents believe that there might be secrets kept from them. Okay, so if nothing else, if you don't believe anything else about the stress indicators and things like that, believe that there are secrets that not even the presidents know about. Okay? So, anyways, really quickly, her interest in the subject, remember how she said the new nomenclature is to call it UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, and not UFO. What she's doing here is social engineering. Now, I agree with her on this. I think we need to have a different conversation about the labels we put on things, but she's trying to normalize it. She wants society to accept the subject. Okay? If we call it a UFO, we have all these weird ideas about aliens and things that the public may not like. Okay? So that last point, like I said, by default, she's acknowledging the real possibility there are people more powerful than the president. All right, so we do have to end up here. I will say that a lot of people in kind of the ufology believe that presidents are not debriefed. I tend to have to agree with that. As they're elected officials, I think there might be selective presidents who have been told, but I don't necessarily believe they're given a book. Read this, Mr. President, or Miss President, this is what you need to know. Okay? I don't think it happens that way. And I've tried to keep this lecture politically neutral, but I will say the people I have talked to whose fathers were good friends with Eisenhower, who were war heroes and things like that, it's generally believed that Republican presidents, if presidents were given knowledge, Republicans are given more knowledge than Democrats, because they're more war and defense oriented. Okay, and you have people who come down from the ranks, you know, that like George Bush, who was a CIA director and things like that. So ask yourself this: if a president wanted to disclose, but the powers that be wanted to prevent him or her, how do you think they'd stop him? Would they withhold the information? They'd kill them? Would they threaten his or her family or their career? Or would they disclose just enough to make it understood not to ask any more? Right? I guess it could be all three. And also ask yourself, what kind of political leverage would it take for disclosure to happen? Why should the government tell us? What do they have to gain by it? Now, there's a lot of hope. Stephen Bassett, in fact, I interviewed him. It'll be in my next video. Actually, he thinks there might be a good chance we'll have disclosure in November. Okay? That the Democrats want to be the disclosure party, that they want to come out. The U.S. obviously wants to be the disclosure country. Would not look good if China or Russia came forward. So if they have knowledge, there's got to be some type of agreement there. If it comes forward, you know, before he leaves office, that's what Bassett's hoping for. I believe personally that we don't have that leverage yet. If you look at the social changes that have happened in the country, whether you believe they're good or bad, for things such as gay marriage or the Black Lives Matter movements and all these things that are happening, you have to have a mass of people behind that. And people protesting and making a lot of noise before the government says, we don't want these problems, we're going to change things. Okay? I don't think we have that in the UFO movement. I really just don't think it's going to take place until we have several major encounters, things like the Phoenix Lights, large cities where we're seeing thousands of people seeing this, it can't be denied. And before the public demands justice, you know, and that something be said or done about it. So I hate to leave on that kind of a negative, non-optimistic note, but I hope that this has been a little bit enlightening for everybody who's you know, maybe not looked into this subject before, and I will be here the rest of the day out at my table so I can answer questions there. And thank you.